Hello mechanics and mad scientists, my name is TBSky, and today's video is a little bit of a request. We're going to be talking about Viktor, the Machine Herald. We're going to be talking about his character design, his lore concept, and some of his characterization in the lore. And we're doing this because, well, I was asked to. I was asked by my fellow YouTuber, Nikrit. Now, if you are subscribed to this channel and you don't know who Nikrit is, you should really know who Nikrit is and go get subscribed to his channel, because he is pretty much the #1 source on YouTube for information about League of Legends lore. If there's anything you need to know, anything you've been wondering about, anything you didn't catch, anything you want to catch up on, all of it is right there on his channel, properly chronicled, wonderfully organized, and really well presented. So you could do a lot worse than going and subscribing to him as well. So, Viktor, the Machine Herald. The basic concept that underlies Viktor is a fairly familiar one, the mad scientist. There's hundreds and probably thousands of different executions of that particular trope across media. So what kind of mad scientist is Viktor? Well, he's a transhumanist. And what that means is that he's someone who believes that humanity must transcend their human forms, essentially that we must become more than human, that we should replace all of the faulty parts that nature gave us with better parts that we have invented for ourselves. Hence, he is the Machine Herald, because he heralds the age of humanity becoming integrated with machines, what he likes to call his glorious evolution. So how does he come to reach that conclusion? Well, Viktor is born in Son as the child of artisans. He becomes enamored with science, enters various science academies, eventually gets invited to study science in Piltover, the overcity of above Son, where he studies at the Academy of Piltover. I don't think it has a name, just the Academy of Piltover, does a whole heck of a lot of good work, meets Jayce, strikes up a substantial friendship with him, as perhaps the only person who can stand Jayce's ego, and then eventually has his research stolen, is alienated by the scientific community, retreats to his own seclusion, and starts to develop his ideology of removing humanity from the equation, essentially to take away all the errors that nature gave humanity and make us perfect with machinery. And a big part of the conflict that he has is a conflict with Jayce, because the lore very much sets up these two champions as sort of opposing ideals of what scientific progress might look like in the League of Legends universe. Jayce being the humanist ideal, the guy who makes great tools that makes life easier for human beings and fixes problems, but who never touches the sacred integrity of the human form, who never messes with the human mind, and who certainly never touches human free will. Viktor, on the other hand, is someone who believes that the human body is entirely expendable if it can be replaced with machinery, someone who believes that the human mind and the human free will can sometimes be hindrances that must be disabled for the greater good. So in that sense, you would think that they are cast in pretty stark hero and villain roles. Heroic Jayce standing up to the mad tyrant Viktor, who wants to transform everybody into soulless machines, but in the conception of the lore that we have now, and we have had a couple of different conceptions of Viktor's lore in the past, one while the League of Legends was still operating, another very slightly different one after the League of Legends was retconned out of League of Legends, and now this one, which portrays these two characters in a very different light. Viktor is someone who's desperate to help. Like, he has all these great solutions that could reduce pain, that could reduce suffering, that could make life easier for so many people, but people have these weird ingrown biases and taboos in their heads whereby they think his designs are somehow immoral and shouldn't be implemented, and that's part of his frustration, and that's part of what's supposed to help us understand why he is the way he is. Jayce, on the other hand, and there really is no way to talk about Viktor without talking about Jayce, is someone who is, yes, a great believer in the human spirit, but he's also an arrogant asshole. Like, he's also just the most arrogant, self-absorbed jerk that you've ever met in your life. Someone who has no consideration whatsoever for other people's feelings, who's not used to waiting around, and who doesn't care to stop and help out the least of us, right? Someone who really wouldn't be bothered helping the poor unless there was something in it, like unless there was some great scientific advancement to be made. At least that's how he's characterized in a lot of his lore. He's not a complete heartless monster. I don't want it to come across as that, but he's certainly someone who's cast as less altruistic in his mindset than Viktor is. So they're ideological opposites, but they're not 100% clear-cut heroes and villains. Nonetheless, Viktor does do a lot of stuff that to most people would seem substantially villainous. Like, for instance, overriding human free will as part of his design because he finds it inefficient. So, Viktor is someone who has no consideration for the human form. Doesn't really bother with the human body. He's not really interested in nature or natural design or indeed moral law. He's interested in pursuing the optimal solution to the problems wherever the path to that optimal solution may take him. So how is that reflected in his character design? Well, I'm sorry to say, but it's not that much. Viktor is an old champion. He's been in League of Legends for a very long time, and that kind of shows on his character model. It's a little bit clunky, it's a little bit old, and it's a little bit weirdly overstuffed with detail. First of all, it's kind of hard to see that he's a champion from Sawn, because Sawn is as a faction tends to have some association with like chem technology rather than hextech technology. And it's also kind of hard to see that he's particularly a champion from Piltover, because Piltover tends towards the sort of pristine, shining, golden science mecha on the hill type of aesthetic. Essentially the aesthetics of Jayce's hammer. But he also doesn't really represent a midpoint between the two. And this is partly because he was designed before there really had been large-scale systematic thought put into the aesthetics of those two regions. Like, Sawn tends to be this punk underground, kind of ruled by chem barons, sort of almost Mad Max-style mad science, landscape, while Piltover is this, gorgeous and upstanding noble city dominated by aristocrats and old orders and great inventors and romantic geniuses. Like, those are sort of the general aesthetics of the two regions, and neither of them come across a lot in Viktor's character model, at least not in my opinion. And again, it's because he's an old champion. There's also what exactly is going on with his outfit is I'm not really clear. Why does he have these skirts? They just seem to be kind of there, and they are made of metal in the splash art, but here they kind of seem to be made of cloth, and it's not clear, are they protective? And the same thing goes for his legs. Now, he has this leg brace, which seems to be to support him because, I mean, it reads as a support for an injury. It reads like something an injured person would have, but if he's the Machine Herald, like the very avatar of improving the human body with technology, why hasn't he just replaced it? And that's sort of my main issue with Viktor's outdated character design, is that it doesn't really reflect this idea of someone who is fanatically devoted to removing the inefficiencies of the human form in favor of a mechanical body. He has a weird mask on, which it is not really clear if that's supposed to, like, is it grafted to his face, or is it, like, has he literally replaced his skull, or is it a helmet? It's not really clear. He still has his hair. For whatever reason, he wears a cloak, which is because why? Like, why does he wear a cloak? Cloaks have associations with heroic ideals, they have associations with supervillains, but Viktor is kind of supposed to be neither of those things. He's not someone who's grandiose. He's not someone who's sort of self-aggrandizing. He's this rational, logical person who tries very hard to suppress emotion, to suppress pride, to suppress self-regard, and just pursue the optimal solution. It doesn't really come across with him, and he has all these details going on. What's his breastplate, by the way? What's his armor? Has he actually grafted it onto his skin? Like, is it part of his body, or is it a thing that he's wearing? It looks like it's a thing that he's wearing, but again, as Mr. Machine Herald, like the guy who is most fanatically devoted to the idea of replacing humanity with machine. If there's something, for instance, human skin is too soft and breakable, it's not good in combat, my feeling is he would just replace all of his skin. Like, he would just, this isn't working, so I guess I'll just get rid of it. Or he would literally, like, surgically graft plates onto his body in a kind of gruesome ritual that's painful, but which he doesn't really care about because he doesn't feel that much pain anymore. And this is something that actually comes across in his short story. This short story is really quite good, actually. I really like the concept here, where Viktor is sitting alone in his house on Emberflit Alley, and he's become kind of an object of worship, as well as a ghost story for the local residents, the local Sawnites who live in the area. Because if you have a problem, if you have an injury or some kind of deficiency with your body, you can go to Viktor, and he will fix it. But he might fix a few more things than you really wanted him to fix. He might make a few more changes than you were really asking for. And so he's become this kind of this ghost story type of character. And so a gang of bullies and their victim, a little kid named Naf, they shove him in there as a way to scare the shit out of him and force him to steal some stuff in there. Because they're bullies and they're assholes. Naf finds him and talks to him, and Viktor... Like, when Naf first meets him, Viktor is sitting at a table operating on his actual arm. Just doing some stuff, messing with some things, replacing some broken mechanisms in his wrist, while doing open surgery on himself out in the open. Like, that's the kind of person that the lore wants us to understand that Viktor is. That he's someone who splits his own skin open and messes with his bones and replaces parts if something is inefficient or not working. So... the leg brace, which tells us that he has sort of tried to make an outside fix to an internal problem in his leg, like maybe it was broken or something, that's what it looks like. We don't really know the function of the thing, is kind of incongruous. The fact that he has one robot-looking metal arm with 4 fingers on it, but then he has his other hand, which still has 5 fingers on it, which is optimal. Is it 4 or 5? And sort of the main symbol of his transhumanism, like his dedication to the idea that the human body is not sacred, that it can be altered in any way he sees fit, is his third arm that comes out of his back, and which is important to a lot of his kit, his lasers and stuff. But to me, that's a little bit, that's okay. So that's that. That's all. Like, if having a third arm is more efficient, why doesn't he have 3 or 4 legs? Like, why doesn't... Something that would be really interesting as a visual symbol of him always being a work in progress, always doing stuff to himself, would be to have part of the chest plate fall away and instead show a hole, and all that's in there is like machinery and clockwork, because he has replaced some part of his body with clockwork, or some Hextech machinery, or some Chemtech machinery, whatever it may be. Something that connects him, first of all, more to the aesthetics of Piltover or Son or wherever he might be drawing his technology from, but also something that shows more visually that this is a guy who is willing to do to himself what he wants to do to others. Like that he's a zealot, he's an idealist, he's someone who's really committed to his idea of glorious evolution. And a lot of this is just, like I said, it's because Viktor is old. He's an old champion who has gone through many changes in terms of his balance over time, and who's gone through very few changes to his lore. And by the time they decided to spend the time and effort to deepen his lore, to make him more of the extremist for his art, the lore had kind of progressed past what his character design could live up to. So he's someone I would very much like to see get an update. Because it's also weird to me that he wields this generic-looking tech staff that's I guess it throws electricity around, which, okay, is that really part of his kit very much? Like the Chaos Storm, I guess, sort of, kinda? I can't actually remember that much about his kit, but it's weird to see him use a tool like that. But there's a point to having him have a staff. He's a herald. Like, he's literally the Machine Herald. He's someone who proclaims that something is about to happen, and a staff is pretty appropriate for that thing. But to push him more towards that kind of design, well, a herald. So what if he had some loudspeakers on him? What if he had something in his design that's associated with broadcast, with spreading the good news? What if you gave him, in other words, a more religious appearance? Someone who is a scientist, who's devoted to scientific ideals, and in his lore, he really doesn't care about the religious worship that some of the residents of Son are subjecting him to. Like, he's an object of worship for them. which is why I think it would be really interesting to have his design be sort of slightly vaguely reminiscent of a priest, or a preacher, or some kind of religious zealot, because that's kind of where he is. He has this religious belief almost in the glorious evolution, and he's not ready to hear other viewpoints because they're wrong, and he has found the truth, and that lends itself well to that kind of thing. And that dissonance, that disconnect between the character that he thinks he is, this rational, detached scientist who only wants what is sensible and good, and the actual person that he has become, a zealot, like a lunatic, a madman, who preaches this idea as though it is a given fact that cannot be debated or changed. Like, that would be a good way to show the disconnect between his scientific self-ideal and the way that he actually interacts with the world. So yeah, Viktor is a character who fundamentally is kind of just old. He's old, he's in need of an update, but for being what he is, like, he looks cool in his splash art. His model is clunky, as I said, but the splash art is really badass. I really do like the idea of a glorious evolution, like it phrased in the same terms as a revolution. I just don't know why he has a Russian accent, though. I don't know why that is. Anyway, Necrit, I hope this video satisfied what you wanted. I hope all of the rest of you found it interesting, and if you do find these videos interesting, well, you can support them on Patreon. If you support at any level whatsoever, you get to vote on topics for future videos. You can see the topics that are up for vote right now, and there's going to be a link to that post down in the description if you want to go and subscribe and get your vote in, where I have basically put up 3 options for something I might do in the future. These are not the only videos I'm going to do. I'm still going to do regular videos also about other stuff that interests me, but if you want to have a voice, if you want to make a choice, go to Patreon, pledge at like literally any level, like $1 a month. It's fine. I will be extremely grateful, and you can make me do one of these videos. I will either do a video where I try to analyze the character designs of Dark Souls bosses while I'm also trying to fight those Dark Souls bosses. There's another video, something that's been asked about a lot in the comments, which is, what the hell is the deal with the Yordles? What's up with them? What are they about? Why are they so weird? Why don't they look more unified? Why are some of them furry and why some of them aren't? We can talk about that, or we can talk about the character design of Metal Gear. Specifically the Metal Gear robots, the Metal Gear Rex, the Metal Gear Ray, the various Metal Gears in Metal Gear 4 and 5. That is also an option which you can vote for. And if you don't want to, it's completely fine. Nobody has to give me any money to do this. I'm just happy that all of you are watching. So thank you very much to my patrons, Aaron Chamberlain, Daniel Wesh, Kim Madison River, Per Matson, Fabian Cox, Serglinator, Markel Carmody, Anton Larson, Jean-Baptiste Rossi, Flamespitter, who I am reasonably certain is a person and not some kind of robot, Nips, Jason, Sean Savoy, Green Moriyama, who is much cooler than his brother Rhett Moriyama, Barry Lee, who will not stop bugging me about that damn Dark Souls video, Soulstep, Yamasuya, Coxwell, Sheridan Shaw, and all the rest of you. My name's been TB Skyen. I will see you in the next video.